2025. Councillor Buchanan. Not seeing you present. I can see that we have present Councillor Dewar. Councillor Equi. I'm not seeing you present. Present today is Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gowland. No. Councillor Keat. No, I'm not seeing you present. Also present today are Councillors Lockhart, Mars and Nugent. We have a number of officers present, and with that I'll pass back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth Ann. Okay, so if we move on to item number 1, and that's the declarations of interest. Do we have any? Nope. So if we move on to item number 2, and that's the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6. Can we agree these minutes, please? Thank you, Julia. Okay, if we can move on to item 3A, and that's the Capital Budget Monitoring 2024 to 2025, the General Fund Capital Programme, pages 7 to 26. And Lorraine O'Hagan, please. And I think Derek Craig as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So item 3A then is the General Fund Capital Programme for 24-25. And in section 4.1 on page 7, it notes the revised programme for the year of 69.832 million. In section 4.2, we note the forecast for the year of being 59.024 million. So we're clearly underspending in terms of our overall programme. And in section 4.3, we're explaining why. So it reflects the timing of spend across this year and into the new financial year as we bridge between March into April. And the budgets for specific projects are required into the new financial year rather than the current year. Any funding for projects remaining underspent at the end of this year will carry forward into the new financial year. And at the time of writing this report, work continues to clarify the predicted spend position for the programme for the remainder of this financial year. And working with my team and finance officers in terms of the physical progress of the projects are working to maximise spend in the current year. As at the 30th of December 24, the actual spend position was 33.568 million, and that's noted in section 4.4. And that does leave us with 25 million still to be incurred up to the end of the financial year. And that does relate to the timing of expenditure on several high-value projects, including the Leisure and Cultural Transformation Fund, the Roads Investment Programme and Planned Asset Management Programme. And a number of these projects will be recharged at the end of the financial year. The latest outturn information that we have from the resources is that this level of expenditure will be incurred between now and the financial year end. And as I said earlier, my officers and the resources are working to maximise spend. Actual funding received to the end of December is 52.5 million. And we're just noting in section 4.6 that the funding package includes an allocation for Tier 2 active travel infrastructure of 272,000. Now, we will be looking to use that money on the Hare-Myers Transport Interchange project, and the money is required to be spent by the end of the financial year. So given the lateness of the timing of the award, the funding, the Tier 2 funding will be spent before the other Tier funding that we've already received. So we're just doing a bit of a swap in terms of how we use the money to the end of the year, and we haven't increased our programme for that, just because all we're doing is changing the funding package there for the project, and we'll carry forward any unspent money into the new financial year. In terms of the appendices to the report, Appendix A on page 10 just shows you the programme for the year of 69.832 and shows you across the resources at a summary level. Appendix B on page 11 shows a bit more detail across each of the individual services of the resources. It shows the fourth column in from the right at the bottom, your programme of 69.8, and your forecast is alongside that 59.024. The right-hand column shows the actual spend to the end of December. Appendix C on page 12 shows the funding package that we have for the current year programme, and it shows we have a fully funded programme, and it shows the significant portions of the funding come from Scottish Government grant and from prudential borrowing. The next page then is the Build Executive Summary, and if I can hand over to Derek, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thanks, Chair. I'm taking you over to page 13, the Build Executive Summary in Appendix D. And I'm pleased to note that at the end of December last year, there were no projects behind programme to report. And across on page 15, the non-Build Executive Summary, there's also no projects showing behind programme at that point in time either. And on page 18, the Roads Executive Summary also gives the good news that there are no projects behind programme at that point in time. Okay, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Lorraine. Do we have any questions? No. No. Okay. If we can agree that report, please.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you, Julia. We're moving on to item 3B, and that's the Capital Budget Monitoring 2024-25 Housing Capital Programme, pages 27 to 32. And I'll hand back to Lorraine, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Housing Capital Programme for the year, and on page 27, section 4.1, you can see that the programme for the year is 77.248 million. Section 4.3 provides a forecast against that budget, and the outturn currently is sitting at 73.112 million. So that's showing an underspend of £4.1 million. And section 4 provides the details of that in terms of delays in site starts at Cairnswell Avenue, Cambuslang and Brackenhill Farm in Hamilton, and also the fact that the average purchase price for properties purchased through the market purchase scheme has reduced, reflecting the current size of properties being purchased. So that's an underspend in the current year. That's actually a lesser underspend than we reported last time to the forum, so we've progressed a little bit further than had been anticipated at that point. And just to note at the end of that section, any council funding not used in year will carry forward into the next financial year. In terms of spend, at the end of December, we had actual spend of 43.425 and with funding to the same value. And you can see that detailed in Appendix A, which is on page 29, showing you the programme for the year of the 77 million and the funding package to support that, which again is the 77 million. If I can take you then on to Appendix B and ask Derek to take the papers from here, thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Chair, again. Apologies for that slight glitch there. I'm taking members on to page 30, the Executive Summary, Appendix B. I'm reporting this time that there is one project behind programme, and over the page on page 31, you see an explanation for that. It's a project called Strother Hill, a Zone C. It's just a phasing of the project. It's an external fabric project, and the project's actually been delayed due to a further bat and bird ecological service being required. So we will be back on programme with that very shortly.
Thanks, Derek, and thanks, Lorraine. So, do we have any questions with regards to that? Councillor Lockhart.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, I don't know whether it's answerable. As a result of the recent storm, where I've seen plenty of photographs, if not experienced myself, considerable amount of damage to buildings, properties, roofs, particular fallen trees on roofs, slates off, and all the rest of it. That is, I presume, partly covered by insurance. Does it have any real impact, if you like, on the total expenditure figures? Do we have parts, if you like, of the council which are uninsured and which we actually have to meet the immediate repair costs for?
If I can, I don't know, Derek, is that something you can answer? So I don't know if Derek, if that's something you can answer.
Apologies, Chair, we're just experiencing some technical issues here. If you bear with me one moment.
Technical issues, there's a surprise.
No problem.
Up at the moment.
Chair, if it's okay with you, could we adjourn for 5 minutes to try and resolve the technical issue, please?
Yeah, I was just about to think the same. No, that's no problem at all.
Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So if we just, if we can go to where Richard's question, I think maybe Richard, hopefully you remember the question that was asked earlier on before we had the technical issues. So Derek.
I did actually hear the question, Chair, so I am able to answer now that I'm connected. So what I would say to Councillor Lockhart is that all properties are insured in the council, although with most insurance policies, as you will be aware, we have an excess in each and every occurrence. So that work is ongoing just now to fully understand what the full impact and value is of all the damage that's been done, and an insurance claim will be put together, both in terms of general services properties and separate to that a housing claim as well, for the properties that belong to South Lanarkshire Council, and they are our insurance liability. So that's ongoing just now. I couldn't give you a value as to what that is, but need to say probably that I think the other part of your question was around, do we have to find the funds for that? I suppose the answer is no, we'll be looking for that to be recompensed via the insurance policy.
Thank you. Just one sort of extension of that question. In terms of time, I mean, clearly there's some repairs which will be urgent, and is that likely to take away, if you like, from the ability to complete other parts of the programme? I mean, it won't be anybody's fault except the fact that you'll have to divert perhaps substantial amount of building work in other directions, which will then delay other projects which we have.
We're not seeing any specific project delays yet, so nothing to report at this moment in time. However, we have employed some additional resources brought in from the private sector to support us in some of this work as well. So we'll have a better understanding of the impact that might have in the next month or so, when we start to see all the early works that need to be done immediately start to be impacted on, and planning out the rest of the work. So still a work in progress yet. Don't at this moment in time see any major project disruptions to the current programme, but that's not to say that something won't be delayed slightly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fine, thank you. I think, Lorraine, I think you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to agree with everything Derek had said there. There obviously was a lot of immediate work carried out, emergency work that we had no option but to do, and anything that we could defer or delay, we would do that. But a substantial amount of it was done immediately. We're not seeing any negative impact on our ability to carry out the capital programme at the moment, but as Derek said, that might have a bit of a knock-on effect further down the line. But we'll advise members of that if and when that happens. In terms of any cost side, Derek's absolutely right, collecting all that information. We're working very closely across the resources with our insurance team, with Scott Dunsmore and his guys, to try and compile a full position in terms of what it's cost the council. We do have insurance across the board in terms of the housing and the general services side. We need to look and see how much of that is claimable and how much we have to pay as an excess as a council. So at the moment, the position that we're reporting in this next report, which is our probable outturn report, is as we knew it as a January time. Obviously, the storm took place later in January. If there's any impact on our financial position, we'll obviously come back to our members when we get to that point. But that's still a work in progress at the moment.
Okay.
So are you happy with that answer? Any other questions, Councillor Lockhart?
No, that's fine. I mean, I was just interested to get a feel for what the likely outcome might be, but that's fine. Thank you. You've answered. I don't think you can answer any better than that.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, if there's no further questions, can we agree that report, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 4, and that's the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2024 to 2025, pages 33 to 46. And I'll hand back over to Lorraine, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just skip between screens here, so just bear with me a second. Okay, so starting on page 33 then, we have the Revenue Budget Monitoring for 24-25, and this also includes the detail of our full-scale probable outturn exercise that took place between Resources and the Finance team November and December of last calendar year, sorry. It's quite a lengthy report and there's quite a lot of detail in it, but I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible and focus on the executive summary, which is in section 4 on page 34. So if I can start then at section 4.2 and just noting then that we have an outturn position before any proposed transfers to reserves, and we're showing you that in appendix 1 of the report, but it's summarised in the table in section 4.2. What table 1 shows you is the position outturn underspend of 18.690 million, and we're proposing transfers to reserves of £4.963 million, and that leaves us with a position after transfers to reserves of 13.7. Now, what I would say there is the 3 bullets just under section 4.2, those transfers to reserves that have already been identified to members or previously approved by members, totalling £26 million, they're already included in these figures. So the position of an £18 million underspend is after taking account of those previously identified or approved transfers to reserves. Section 4.4 explains the position across the individual resources. So across resources, we're reporting a combined break-even position, but that includes transfers to reserves of 3.2 million. And the details of those are summarised in section 5.2 across the resources, but I'll just pick up on each of them just underneath at the top of the bottom of page 34, sorry, and the top of page 35. So in community and enterprise resources, they're showing a break-even position, but that's after transfers to reserves in relation to the fleet sinking fund and electric bus payback monies. Within education resources at the top of page 35, again, they're showing a break-even position after a transfer to reserves for PEF expenditure, and that's normal business. You'll be aware of that. We are allocated PEF money for the academic year, so we'll take the amount that relates to the April-June of the academic year and tip that into the new financial year. Finance and corporate resources are showing a break-even position, and that's after transfers to reserves in relation to the Scottish Welfare Fund money, which we received from the government quite late on in the year, but we can carry it into next year. And also in terms of grants to voluntary organisations, where we've had an underspend each year for the last few years, and that one's linked to one of the savings proposals for next financial year. Section 4.8 notes that housing and technical resources are showing a break-even position, again after transfers to reserves, and that's for homelessness, Ukraine funding and office accommodation costs that are committed. Again, just carrying that into the next financial year to make sure we incur the spend. Social work resources is then noted in section 4.9. The position for social work resources, adults and older people, which is the budget delegated to the IGB, already includes a transfer to reserves for committed repairs work within social work properties. It also includes a commitment of £650,000 in relation to an element of the budget delegated to the IGB, but is effectively underspending in the current year. Now, these monies are part of the Council's contribution to the IGB, and the Council could have retained these monies. However, the assumed commitment allows the IGB to retain that non-recurring underspend within their reserves, and they can carry that forward in terms of spend for health and social care into next year. And that's in line with the approach that we've been taking over the last few years with regard to integrating health and social care budgets. So it's proposed that these monies are retained in the Council's balance sheet, but they will be available for the IGB into next year. Section 4.10 notes the social work resources non-delegated services, so that's children and families, performance and support, and justice. Again, it's showing a break-even position across the three areas, and that includes a transfer to reserves for children and family expenditure for residential placements and fostering and kinship care, which we are anticipating continue into 25-26, while the children and families recovery plan continues to be implemented, and you know the details of that are reported to the Social Work Committee every period. So for your information, all resource transfers that are being proposed and that were approved by Executive Committee are noted in Appendix 2 for your information. If I move on to loan charges in section 412, we're showing an in-year underspend of £7.9 million. That's an increase on the reported figure that we had previously. If you remember back to Executive Committee in November, we'd already highlighted a figure of 7.2 million. We've got an increase here because of the timing of capital spend and the timing of borrowing and the interest rates at the time that we've had to borrow. So we're seeing a benefit there. And we're looking to build that into the budget strategy decisions for members as we move forward. In terms of corporate items, which is in section 4.13, we have a net underspend there of 2.5 million for corporate items, and that's after known commitments. There's a bit of detail there in terms of what we've already highlighted to members previously in terms of pay award funding and what we've done with that. But really probably the main gist of this paragraph is that we have 2.5 million in underspend, and we previously had identified an underspend of £2 million. So we are in a better position to the tune of £520,000, and you can see the detail of that in section 4.14, and that's really in relation to additional procurement savings that we have identified during the current financial year. And that we can take the benefit of this year in terms of an underspend and refactor them into the 25-26 budget strategy. In terms of council tax and council tax reduction scheme, noting that in section 4.16, and again that's showing a 3.3 million underspend, and I say again because we have already reported that to members back in November time, and we're still expecting the same outcome position, so there's no change there. So taking all of that into account then, section 4.17 notes the summary position for the revenue budget for the current year, and that's the overall underspend of £13.727 million that was noted in the table 1 that I mentioned before. In terms of the 13.727, we're making a proposal there in terms of the two bullets in section 418 that the 7.9 million underspend from the loans fund review be transferred to reserves to support the budget strategy, which, as was discussed at Executive Committee, could include the 25-26 revenue budget, that the £2 million underspend in utilities and the 520 from procurement savings, with 3.3 million over recovery in council tax, totalling 5.820 million, be transferred to reserves to support budget strategy, which again could include the 25-26 budget. We're just noting there in section 419, the majority of the underspend that we'd highlighted in this paper had already been reported to members, and this paper reflects some marginal movements in loan charges underspend and in the procurement savings that have been identified to members, and that utilities and council tax positions remain the same as they were back at our early term in November time. So really this is for information for the Scrutiny Forum. It's already been to Executive Committee, and the recommendations are there for members to note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Do you have any questions from anyone? Councillor Equi.
Sorry, apologies. I took too long to come off of or to put my mic on. Can you just bear with me to flick to the other screens that I can get it? See, page 44. And it's the proposed transfers to reserves included in the probable outturn. I think I know that this has already been to the executive. I just wanted to raise a point that I'm all for us putting things into reserve, so that we've got a backup. But there's a few things there that I'm looking at that I know I've got cases for people screaming out for money, whether it's to do with housing, homelessness, or to do with social care. And, you know, all the money hasn't been spent, and it's getting put into reserves. And I feel it raises concerns because if we've still got people coming to us that are in need and they're fighting to get their money, whether it's to do with their adult children, with additional support needs or whatever else, I don't understand how we've got money to put away in reserves. If we've got people that have got housing issues and basically like they've got a problem with their roofs and internally with mould and fungus and other things like that, that we're saying that we can't get round to them, I don't know how we've got money then that we can then put into reserves. Now, it might be something that I'm missing, and if it is, then I apologise. But I really don't understand how there's so much money that's getting put into reserves when we've got so many people out there that are in a cost of living crisis, and literally they're having to scream at us as councillors for us to be able to take things forward to help them. So I would welcome any feedback, and if it's me that needs educated, I'll take it, because I would just like to know what it is that I'm missing. And thank you.
Thanks, Monique. I don't know, Lorraine, have you got anything to reply to that?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Equi, for your question. And I understand your concerns. All I can say to you in terms of the proposed transfers to reserves that are noted in that appendix are it's all for committed items of spend in terms of what the resources are seeing as they've got a budget allocation for the year, and what they've provided to us and working with our guys in finance is a position statement in terms of where they think they will be by the end of this year. And anything that's underspent there in terms of specific areas for specific things and for commitments that are in the system, that's what we are proposing to members that we carry it forward for. So we don't support them just putting money into reserves just for the sake of it. It's got to be for a reason. So we're quite keen and clear with the resources that it's got to be for a purpose. If there's any particular areas or any particular points or resource areas that you want me to take back to a particular service, I can do that on your behalf, or I can speak to you afterwards. But from our perspective at the Centre in Finance, we're very much committed to making sure that any money that's transferred to reserves has a purpose and a road to go down.
Councillor Equi.
Chair, with your indulgence, Lorraine, thank you. And I know that it's not this committee that are making these decisions, and I also know you do a phenomenal job and you're there for the other departments that are saying, here, can you please do this? So I totally and utterly 100% get that. I will take your offer greatly and take up specific cases offline. But what I can do just now, just to enlighten to anybody else why I'm raising this, is we've got a situation, and I'll use the social care and I'll talk generally because I'll not mention people's names. And I've got a couple of cases, and it's a simple case of they are having to scream out and constantly contact me because their social worker, and it's a couple of social workers who are phenomenal, great at their job, I'm not saying anything about them, but their hands are tied because people can't get money paid to them for money that's owed to them for either their children or their adult children with additional support needs. We also have other situations where people need aids and adaptations in their house, and literally it's not good enough for them to just tell us that they need aids and adaptations. It's like they've got to fight so that they can get on a list so that an OT will come out to their house, or we use link housing or the other house associations which aren't on our list, or they're not in our charter, therefore they don't need to follow the same rules as the other people on our charter, which means that we're leaving people to get desperate till they feel as if they've exhausted every other avenue before they come to us, and these people are not getting aids and adaptations quick enough, and they're not getting their money quick enough to basically, like, you know, organise the respite for them. So I'll take the specific cases with you offline, but I think it's worth noting that these are real life situations and they're not just one-offs. We are getting them as counsellors all the time now. So I'm definitely not getting any of our staff. I've never came across a bad member of staff yet, but I'm coming across a lot of people that are really, really under strain. And I wonder if we are perhaps putting too much pressure on our workers to watch their budgets and their targets, which means that it's making it too hard for people that are already vulnerable, could have mental health issues, whatever else, for them to actually then get the services they need, because sometimes it just becomes too much for them. They go without, and then we've got an even bigger problem. Anyway, thank you very much for your indulgence and your time.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think, Councillor Echoing, I think it's obviously worthwhile to have that conversation with Lorraine and take that offline for the specific cases. So thank you. Moving on, if there's no other questions, can we agree that report?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5. And that's the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2024-2025. The detailed resource analysis, pages 47 to 106. And this time, Graham Booth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Again, I would just switch between screens here, bear with me. The normal report just taking us through the executive summary for each of the resources, the variance explanations, and also the line-by-line trend analysis. And again, I'll just go through this on a resource basis and pause for a chance for any questions on any particular areas within that. Starting then on page 49, Appendix A for Community and Enterprise Resources, and you will see there we are noting the position of a 40,000 underspend before transfers to reserves overall, and at year-to-date actual of 93.5 million against the 133 million projected outturn. The explanations are on pages 50 to 60. And also the line-by-line analysis is on pages 61 to 63. And as I say, happy to take any questions at this point on community and enterprise resources specifically.
Yeah, do we have any questions on community enterprise? No, okay, we can move on to the next one, please, Graham.
No problem, thank you. The next resource is education, and Appendix B is on page 65 of your papers, and that is showing the position, as Lorraine alluded to, of a 417,000 underspend in relation to the PEF transfer to reserves, I say, just due to timing in terms of that falling within the school year as opposed to the financial year. And again, you can see there as well year-to-date actual of the 359 million against the 482 that we have for the budget and outturn. Explanations are on pages 66 to 68, and the line-by-line analysis is on pages 69 to 70. Again, anything new is underlined from previous periods. As I say, we are now reporting the explanations in line with the year-end position, as all these figures are based on the outturn or the forecast outturn. So again, happy to take any questions in particular on education.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Graham. Any questions? Councillor Equi.
Hi, Graham. Thanks very much for that. As always, you're very clear. It was just to say, it was in regards to the amount of money that we're put into residential use in other authorities. I take it that's residential. Is that with our children, or is that with our adults that have additional support needs for respite?
Sorry, just within education, that will be the children residential placements, just in terms of that the school, as I say, and residential that comes along with that. So in the educations, particular variance that relates to there, that would be for school. But as I say, there may also be similar, say, explanation you would see later on in the social work side. But for education, it would be schools, say, in terms of school age children.
Okay, Chair, with your indulgence, please.
Yep, absolutely, no problem at all.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Could I just ask, when was the last time that we as an authority looked at the amount of children that we've got in our education service that basically their parents have been asking for them to have respite, because they felt that that was what was needed, and whether it's respite or whether it was they felt that residentially it would be better for the child, whether it's to help with their social skills, developmental, education, because I'm very much aware that we don't have a place like that anymore in South Lanarkshire, and that we've got to pass our children out. And I just wonder if it's something that we should actually be looking at to see whether it's worthy of looking at bringing it back in to South Lanarkshire, just because I always feel as if it's something that it's like a last minute, or not last minute, it's like a last resort for putting the children into residential educationally, and I just think that if we actually had something here, then it would be something that could actually help the children and also help the parents and also the other siblings to actually unite the family, rather than it be that's getting pushed away into another authority. Because obviously with that, you've then got the travel costs to go to the other authority, as well as the overnight stays. And also that's traumatic if a child's in the stage where they actually do need to educationally to either have the respite or for a weekend or for a week, or if it's actually that they need to actually stay, whether it's for a couple of months or a couple of years, and it's just to and from, or whatever, transport wise. So when was the last time that we looked at it and actually analysed the figures, and then looked at basically like for parents that were actually raising such a thing, and what's our way forward?
I can pick up on, or I can certainly take that back to get the specifics from both social work and education. But what I can, I suppose, mention is just in terms of a lot of the work that's ongoing just now in children and family services, in line with, in conjunction with education, particularly around our intensive family support service. So this is looking at, as I say, the aim is to bring children back into the community who are already in these residential placements. And that will be the kind of first phase of that, to look at children who are currently there. But I do know a big part of that is that early intervention in terms of, in terms of these children who, like you explained, who are coming through, where families are under stress, at the moment, and almost trying to intervene at an early stage, basically before obviously they then, like you say, end up in a residential placement, or then it's harder obviously to bring them back into the community kind of further down the line. So I know, as I say, there's a lot going on just now between social work, education, and indeed housing, because again it's linked to some of the the older children as well, in terms of getting them housing opportunities again in our area. But again, that kind of cycle of freeing up spaces then within our own homes, and again just getting people back and slowly kind of bringing them back into the community. But as I say, I do know it's a kind of 3 or 4 year plan that we're looking at. Initially it's about the current placements, but I do know a big part of that will be on the early intervention as well. But I can certainly ask for kind of specifics on number and take that back to social work and education to provide that. But hopefully that gives us, as I say, a bit of that is a big thing that's ongoing just now within children and family services.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Graham. Chair, can I ask one more thing of Graham, please?
Yes, you're pushing it, but yes, that's okay, Councillor Equi.
Thank you. Graham, it was just to say that just in case you thought that I was thinking that residential in some way for the children was a bad thing, especially if it's somebody that needs to go to an educational resource and it's like, for like, months or for a year or two, that's sometimes what's best for the child.
Yep.
So it's not that it's not looked, I'm not looking at that as a punishment or a bad thing. Like, I think that it has its place and I
Yep.
think it is needed for some, but obviously, like, I welcome everything that we're doing to basically keep families together and, do what's right for everybody. But anyway, that's me, I promise. No more. And thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Equi. Okay, any follow-up questions? Any other questions there? No. I will move on to the next one, Graham. Thank you.
No problem. Next resource is Finance and Corporate Resources Appendix C on page 71. And again, we're showing the projected outturn variance, that's 856,000. But again, all of these underspends reported, these are just the position before the transfers to reserves. So again, you would see the corresponding 856,000 in the transfers to reserves pages Lorraine kind of outlined earlier in relation to the Scottish Welfare Fund and grants for Finance and Corporate Resources. Again, something that was mentioned last time, just in terms of the timing, I know that does look a bit out in terms of our year-to-date actual is 40 million alongside the projected outturn, but that's mainly within our IT services, and that's because a lot of the recharging is done at the end of the financial year, when all the costs are known, as I say, for our contracts and things. So that will obviously now take place between over the next kind of 5 to 6 weeks up to the end of the financial year. So there's no nothing to be alarmed about there in terms of that year-to-date actual being alongside the outturn for the year. The explanations, our full explanations are on page 72 to 75. Again, anything new is underlined, and we have the line-by-line analysis on pages 76 to 77. And again, happy to take any questions in relation to Finance and Corporate Resources, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Any questions for Graham? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, Graham, please.
Next resource is Housing Technical, Appendix D on page 79. Again, the £705,000 underspend before the 3 transfers to reserves. And similarly here, again, just reiterate the point, the year-to-date actual is shown more than outturn. Again, that will be within our property services and the recharge of income for, again, kind of various projects that will be work in progress throughout the year, with that then being recharged once they're complete onto the programmes, as I say, across both housing and general services, capital and revenue programmes. The explanations for the general services are on pages 80 to 85, and the line-by-line analysis is 86 to 88. And again, following that is the HRA explanations. They're on pages 89 to 92, Appendix C, with a line-by-line on 93 to 94. And again, happy to take any questions in relation to either the Housing and Technical General Services or HRA financial information included within the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. No, any questions? Nope, that's fine. Perfect. We can move on to, I think it's the last one, is it, Graham?
Yep, last one then is social work, Appendix F on page 95. and there we're showing the 1.189 million underspend before the transfers. Again, the actual to date positions alongside the outturn and the revised annual budget for information. The explanations, pages 96 to 102 with anything new underlined, and the line by line analysis is on the last pages from 103 to 105. And again, happy to take any questions in relation to anything that's new come up or indeed anything that's been there from previously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that last part? Nope. Okay, can we agree the report in whole?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you very much, Julia. And there was no urgent items of business. So if I can take this opportunity just to thank everyone to come along here and apologise profusely for the IT gremlins. But we got there in the end. Finally. But thank you very much.
You did.
And have a good afternoon. And we'll now close the
Thank
meeting.
you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks all. See you later.